Welcome back, America. It's Friday. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway, welcoming in Doug Lesmerises. Doug is, of course, the co-host of the College Football Playoff Show podcast with Shahan Rajahat. I screwed it up again with Shahan. Doug, I've asked you to stick around for the second hour, the first, because the biggest story in sports is OBJ. And I listened to your take on OBJ yesterday. I'm going to foreshadow that it's my take on OBJ. I want you to explain it to people because we're grown-ups. That's the difference between the rest of the world. You and I are you're 20 years younger than me, but I'm 20 years. Most sports writers think the OBJ story is a story that needs explaining, and I need you to explain it. But first, the College Football Playoff Show podcast. What was the most important college football game last week and the most important coming forward? And by the way, my copy of The Road to Ohio State arrived this week, and it's fabulous.
Well, I appreciate that, Hugh. Thank you very much. But the big game last week was Michigan related, right? It was this Michigan State game that was a high quality game. Somebody had to win, somebody had to lose, but the idea that those teams both played that well. Michigan State won. Michigan State was then number 3 in the initial playoff ranking. 2 weeks from now, November 20th, Michigan State at Ohio State is a gigantic game. Could almost be a play-in game for the playoff because the Spartans played really well. Beat a good Michigan team last week. Mel Tucker, second year. He's a Cleveland native, too. Mel Tucker, Cleveland native, coming to Columbus on November 20th. So that win for Michigan State was gigantic.
Now, Mel Tucker, a Mel Tucker question. My son, one of them, went to the University of Colorado. He's still mad at Mel Tucker in the way that Florida fans are still mad at Urban Meyer. Do you expect Mel Tucker to move on at the end of this season to USC?
It's tough, man. Everybody's going to want him, right? I mean, sometimes when you're hot, you're hot. He is a Midwestern guy, right? He went to Wisconsin. He coached for the Browns. He coached at Ohio State. So I could see him sticking around, but he also knows the SEC really well. He's been at Bama and Georgia, and LSU might be really interested. He could be in a tough spot to make a decision.
So you're right about it being a play-in game. I listened to the College Football Playoff Show podcast, and I understand you guys didn't like how they got there. I like the fact that Ohio State could play in. I figured they set it up that way. And they put Michigan State for its first and only time in the top 4 ever. And that was a good set of rankings. What's most important this weekend?
This weekend is an avoid the upset weekend, Hugh, because there aren't a ton of equal match games with the good teams. One to watch is Michigan State's going to Purdue. Purdue has a couple really good players. Michigan State's only favored by 3, even though they're the number 3 team in the country. But one I like is the Washington-Oregon rivalry. Hugh, I'm always on alert when coaches talk about academics. Because I get it, right? It's college stuff matters. But if you're talking about the academic prowess of your team and your college, it's only because you're not winning enough games. So Jimmy Lake, the Washington coach, took kind of a shot at Oregon this week and said, we don't recruit against Oregon because we're an academically better school. Oregon's number 4 in the country. Washington is 4-4 overall. Oregon versus Washington this week. When you start putting up the GPAs, it's like, all right, I get it. Your GPA's high.
Well, you're right. That's a signal of doom approaching. But wasn't Washington early on in the College Football Playoff Show podcast, wasn't Washington a thing for a couple of weeks?
Well, everybody really liked them. And then they lost their first game, and then they lost at Michigan and started 0-2. So that's when they went back to the chemistry lab.
Okay. Doug, before we go to break, you said some interesting things about the college football ranking playoff board, how it's 13 people. I didn't know any of this, by the way. And how journalists should be on it and analytics people should be on it, but that the athletic directors are on it now. And that was all very interesting to me. Did they do a good job?
They got sucked in by the Alabama aura, I thought. I thought Alabama at number 2 was too much about Alabama's reputation, and they have great players. I don't think their collection of what they've done this year, I think they fell into a little bit of groupthink in that room. They do have 13 dedicated, smart people, but when you all think the same way, you can start heading down one path if you don't have a couple people who say, hey, wait, what if we think about it this way? And I don't think they had enough people stop them from getting sucked in this week.
You know, Shehan Jeharaja, I remembered it this time. Shahan was very upset. I thought he was going to have a stroke, but he's only like 23, so he can't have a stroke. What upset him so much?
He loves the underdog. He loves the little guy. And college football, it's very difficult for the little guy to break in to the big dog room. Cincinnati has done everything it could do as a non-Power 5 team. They beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a really good team. They've won all their games, and they were only number 6. This was the highest, I think, that any smaller school would ever have a chance to be in the rankings. Some people thought Cincinnati should be in the top 4. They're number 2 in the polls. They were number 6 in the playoff ranking. He likes the underdog. That's why he was so mad. But I mostly agree with him.
Yeah, well, life isn't a Hoosiers movie. It's not going to work out that way. Cincinnati has to be good for 5 years. Doug Lesmerises is sticking around. And when he comes back, we're going to explain for the rest of the world OBJ, which for the life of me is the easiest thing in the world, but it has become drama fest across the United States. Doug has a great take on it. That we're going to switch from the college football playoff show podcast to Orange and Brown talk when we come back, because you need to know about OBJ, Baker, and everything that matters in the NFL, because it's Friday on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stay with us, America. Morning, Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway. Hour 3 today on Friday. Hillsdale Dialogue coming up. Hour 1, I did Sonny Bunch, Doug Lesmerises on the College Football Playoff Show podcast. But this is a different Friday. I've asked Doug to actually stick around because there's a big story in sports. And the big story is in Cleveland. And Doug covers the Browns at the Orange and Brown Talk. He also covers the Buckeyes at Buckeye Talk. But Orange and Brown Talk is not only in the midst of a transition with Ellis Williams leaving and the new person, whose name I can't remember, Doug.
Ashley Basso.
Ashley. It's like a TV series in the 4th season substitutes an actor for a familiar character, and it takes a while. So, Doug, Odell Beckham Jr. came to Cleveland and was on the cover of Sports Illustrated 3 years ago. He is having an interest. Well, you tell everybody this because I thought your conversation and assessment of this was 100%.
Yeah, so he's been unhappy with how often he gets the ball. His dad posted a video on social media that shows all the times that Odell looks open and didn't get the ball. People got upset about that. They thought it was a shot at Baker Mayfield. And now Odell Beckham Jr. has been excused from practice the last 2 days. And there's a lot of reports that Odell Beckham's representatives in the Browns front office are working on his release. And there are some reports that he may be released by the Browns today. And I just sort of thought maybe you can get in a room and work it out. That Odell Beckham Jr. has not talked to his quarterback or his coach since this stuff came out. And I know that you can get mad at each other and you don't have to be best friends, but I thought maybe you could still play football together on the same team and still find a way to work this out. It's been really unfortunate because Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield really haven't been healthy and functional together at the same time. So I still thought there was hope for the last 9 games of the regular season. It feels like it's not going to work out for you. This may end in the next few hours, and he may not be a Brown. But I just kind of wanted them to get some dinner and everybody try to work this out. Because I think sometimes something comes to a head. You hit bottom, and then you can move on and build a better relationship. So that might have been Pollyanna thinking by me, but I would have taken a shot.
No, it was not Pollyannish. In fact, Mary Kay is the homeroom teacher of Orange and Brown Talk. And everyone goes to her because she covered the Browns for the longest. She's the beat reporter. Everyone else is an analyst. And Dan Labby is a very fine sports writer and broadcaster, is of the opinion that this is an end-of-the-world story and that Kevin Stefanski has to take a stand or Andrew Berry has to take a stand. And I think you said, I don't want to misrepresent you, wait a minute. These are millionaires. That's a Terry Pluto line, by the way. Remember, you're talking about millionaires who get paid a lot to play a game. You got to get along in the world in which we live with people that you don't like. And I've been in broadcasting for 30 years, and there are a lot of knuckleheads in broadcasting. And you know what? You go to work. And, I've been working with Dwayne for 20 years. So we're like the lock ones, but we're fine. And I do not understand how anyone could come to the conclusion that you cut him. Because he's a receiver of some talent who will go to the Ravens. I mean, is this even is it in doubt that he'll go to the Ravens?
Sure feels like that way to me, right? We may find that out very soon that he very well could end up with the team that the Browns need to finish ahead of and may have to play on the field in their last 9 games to get to the playoff. And I do still think he has talent. So it really is a rough spot. They do have a guy, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's a second receiver who will probably slide in. But I just still think having him on your team in some way and keeping him off another team, those are two positives. He's still with you doing something, and he's not somewhere else. Those are two things that I still think could help the Browns, even though it's been clunky so far. I get it. But also, we maybe don't know. I don't know what else may have gone on if there have been previous disagreements. But I do believe that in a world of millionaires, a lot of players have supported Odell. Coaches have to work with those players. You don't have to always see eye to eye, but you have to function together. So I don't think there has to be a bad guy in this, Hugh. The situation stinks. It's been a little rough. So I don't know that you have to blame Odell or Baker or Kevin Stefanski or anybody. But I just would have kept fighting to try to make it work. And let's figure out, can we just get 9 more Sundays out of this, even if it's not a perfect fit, it still might be good.
Yeah, Jarvis Landry is also on the Cleveland Browns for the benefit of people who follow some other team that isn't the most important team. Jarvis Landry is a grown-up. He's acting like a grown-up. His language can be salty, but he hasn't said anything. I thought Baker and Kevin Stefanski acted like grown-ups and not say anything. I assume Andrew Berry told them not to say anything because he's the boss and he's in charge of the front office. But I go back to the conversation that people had on Orange and Brown Talk yesterday, which is they're millionaires playing a game. This isn't college football. You've covered college football. Ohio State had a blow-up this year. A linebacker stormed off the field and went into the portal. It was like a scene from a comic book. He disappeared into the portal and he's gone because he got mad and he's a kid. Well, these people are only 25 or 27 years old. They're not really parents. Until you're a parent, you actually don't have perspective on anything. That's the Hugh Hewitt view of the world, because you don't. Do they ever just sit down and say, gosh, life has been so good to us. Maybe we should take care of the fans first. Do you think they ever have that conversation?
Maybe. I do think it's very hard. These are high-achieving people who have had success their whole lives. And usually what they've done has worked because they have proof. I'm at the highest level. I'm one of the best at what I do. And football, man, you got to work hard to be good at football, no matter how much talent you have. So I do think when you get to the top level, sometimes you see things through your own lens because your own lens has gotten you where you are. So you have proof, evidence, time after time after time that what you do is right. Because I wouldn't be here otherwise. So I think that can be difficult. Money changes everybody. It is a lot of individual. It's a team sport for sure, but you have to have individual excellence. And I do think sometimes it's okay to treat different excellent players differently because people come at things different ways. And I've thought that Odell is a lot like an artist sometimes, right? That he has a certain way he does things, and the same things that make him great can also make him difficult to deal with at times. But you don't get to pick and choose with people. You take the whole package. Because if you took out some of the essence of what Odell is, you also would lower his talent level because he does it a certain way. So they've tried it for 3 years. I get that it's clunky. He wasn't going to be here next year anyway. The way that the salaries work, the salary cap with the Browns, this was definitely his last year no matter what. So it's like, can you squeeze out 9 more games? I thought maybe do whatever you have to do to squeeze out 9 more games, but it's just not going to be that way. I think it sounds like...
Well, he's got to play somewhere because he doesn't have a contract for next year, and he's got to prove his worth, or he'll end up signing a 1-year deal somewhere to prove his worth. It's not in his interest to have this happen. But I want to conclude, Doug Lesmerises, and maybe it'll be on Orange and Brown Talk. You've already done this, and it's already in the can. Is there any other aspect of life where we care what somebody's parent thinks? If my mom and dad are both gone, if they ever posted something on Twitter, no one would care. And the President of the United States, we sometimes have human interest story in their mom and dad, not President Biden, they're gone. But usually we'll get a nice thing on Richard Nixon's mother, Hannah, at the White House when he was becoming president. Nobody cares outside of athletics what the parents think. Why is that a thing in sports?
I don't know. Because, again, Odell didn't do anything, right? His dad posted a video that hurt people's feelings, and then Odell didn't apologize quickly enough for some people. So I guess if you think it's coordinated, if you think there's some kind of plan, but my mom always said, like, blame her for stuff. She'll take the blame for me, right? But that whatever she would do, I wouldn't be held accountable for what my parents said, because guess what? And Odell's dad even said this. He said, I'm a parent first. So Odell's dad is not looking out for the best interest of the Browns. He's looking out for his son, because that's what parents do. But
that's our job is.
Odell doesn't love the Browns still. I thought that was a little odd.
All right, so last question for you has nothing to do with football. You told a story about being in the drive-through lane at McDonald's, I think in Bloomington, where you got stuck and you ended up having to get. I just had a question. I've been there and I've done that. It's the McDonald's in San Clemente on the way from San Diego to Los Angeles. If you stop at the wrong time and you're in the lane, you can't get out, you're there for an hour. When you go through that lane and you get your order and the fries are cold, do you A, go back into park the car, go into the restaurant and try and get hot fries, B, throw the fries out the window, or C, eat the fries?
So I am a grumpy customer sometimes, Hugh, but in the pandemic world where things are difficult for businesses, I do have more respect for anybody who's showing up and doing the job, even if my fries are colder than I would like. Old Doug might be throwing the fries against the drive-through window. New Doug is probably saying, well, I'm glad you came to work today. I'll eat the fries as is and move on with my day.
That's a great attitude. I would eat the fries without even thinking. Doug Lesmerises, Orange and Brown Talk, Buckeye Talk, and of course the College Football Playoff Show podcast. Thank you, Doug. I'll be right back. OBJ, stay in Cleveland, win a Super Bowl. Really, winning changes everything. Everybody, kumbaya, get together. Let's get back to politics right after the break here on the Hugh Hewitt Show.